Welcome. For those of you who have followed my channel for the last 5 years or so know of my fascination for the Michigan 1966 UFO swamp gas sightings. But rather than recap what I've already covered in 5 or 6 videos, I will put a list in the description so that you can check those out if you want to, if you've not already. Recently, while looking randomly on archives.org, I came upon a whole slew load of radio news broadcasts and interviews from when these sightings were actually taking place. Now, these are the elements that fueled my fears when I was 11 years old in 1966, but they are the gems which fuel my fascination as an adult, as an elder, as a senior. Oh my God, I'm a senior. Oh well, anyways, could be worse, couldn't it? But for me, it was thrilling to hear these broadcasts featuring the people who were most involved in the sightings and those whose mission it was to find an explanation for them, no matter how absurd it might have sounded, and it did sound exactly that, absurd. There were precious few in Michigan, even this 11-year-old boy, that believed Dr. J. Allen Hynek when he gave his official explanation that some of the sightings were swamp gas. Now, a lot of people claim that he blamed them all on swamp gas, but such is not the case. He blamed only certain ones on swamp gas. But in later years, he came to regret having made that conclusion, and that he was pressured into making that by the Air Force at the time. Also interesting to me in these radio broadcasts is that it mentions that there were sightings in Genesee County, and I was unaware of that at the time. Genesee County is one county south of where I'm at in Saginaw County, and my sighting was here in Saginaw County, actually in Bridgeport, Michigan, only about 15 miles south of Saginaw on the Dixie Highway. So anyways, I want to share these with you. I want to thank very, very much archives.org and Faded Discs, the uploader on Archives, that have preserved these truly rare recordings, and I hope you'll find them as interesting as I have.
Here in Michigan, Washtenaw County authorities this morning are taking a close look at last night's flurry of reports of flying saucer activity northwest of Ann Arbor. 2 weeks of reported sightings came to a climax when a farmer reported a saucer touched down on his property. At about the same time, Dexter Village Police Officer Robert Honeywell said a saucer-like vehicle hovered about 10 feet over his scout car. 45-year-old Frank Manor and his 19-year-old son Ronald told authorities a craft came to earth on his farm about 18 miles northwest of Ann Arbor. He said he and his son walked to within 500 feet of the object before it whizzed away soundlessly. Manor, Patrolman Honeywell, and at least 5 other witnesses said it looked about the size of a large automobile. Washtenaw County Deputy Sheriff John Foster, who himself had reported seeing such an object last week, gave this description of what witnesses saw last night.
The object was observed to be of a brown spotting, appeared to be a cooler-type outside surface. Object observed to be flat upon the bottom and cone-shaped toward the top, however being low in height. 2 small lights appeared to be at the outer edges of the object, glowing in a bluish-green light and intensifying to a brilliant red in color. When the vehicle or object illuminated, the lighting was a yellow-white in color and ran horizontally between the 2 outer lights, allowing some of the object to be viewed. Outer body appeared to be rough in texture.
Does this jive with the other descriptions then from other
witnesses? This is the closest that it's ever been seen. Do you understand that? And this is, as far as the lighting setup is concerned, it's the same. Bluish green lights and so on like that. And the shape also. But as far as this quilted outside surface, I don't know myself.
general nature. Do you pretty much believe in it, Deputy Foster?
I do, really, because you can't discount it after you've actually seen it. We followed this one object last Monday night for some 2 or 3 hours, and it joined up with 3 other and flew in formation.
Washtenaw County Deputy John Foster, whose partner photographed some unidentified flying objects last week and still is awaiting return of the prints. Radar observers at Metropolitan and Willow Run airports and Selfridge Field say they did not pick up any indications of unusual airborne activity last night. Was it a flying saucer? Patrolman Robert Honeywell of Dexter, Michigan said it looked more like a flying waffle. Anyway, Honeywell and 5 other persons say they saw a strange sight last night. They said a round-shaped object slightly larger than a standard-sized American automobile, made of waffled metal with blinking lights, moved soundlessly through the sky near the Ann Arbor, Michigan suburb and landed in a marsh. Patrolman Honeywell said the object was flashing a red, white, and blue light. He said he and his son-in-law turned the flashlight beam on the object and it flew soundlessly away. Charles Murphy, NBC News at the White House.
As NBC reported, more reports of unidentified flying objects in Washtenaw County, only this time we have a reported landing. Several residents and police officers in the Ann Arbor area reported spotting mysterious aircraft, the 3rd report in a week. Patrolman Robert Honeywell from Dexter told sheriff's officers that one of the objects hovered about 10 feet above his patrol car last night. He said it resembled an airplane, had a waffle-like exterior and lights in the center and around the edges. He told officers the lights diffused towards the center of the craft when it accelerated. Washtenaw County Sheriff Douglas Harvey rushed 7 patrol cars to the area and reported later that several of his deputies reported sighting objects from 2 different locations. Selfridge Air Force Base said it had no reports of UFOs.
Your WTAC microphones are in Ann Arbor for this direct line description from Sheriff Douglas Harvey.
We had several cars dispatched out there, and they described it as the same thing as we had same kind of objects a week ago. The bright lights, the bluish green light, and so on, maneuverability from side to side, up and down. Had a saucer-like shape to it. Mr. Manor, him and his son were out in the farm and observed this object go down into the swamp area. At the same time, we had 6 other cars out there, and a University of Michigan professor, they also observed the same thing, and everybody described the thing as the same. No sound to the darn things at all.
Sheriff Douglas Harvey on the WeTac direct line to Ann Arbor.
Bring you the news with Frank Tomlinson reporting.
Thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. In the headlines, those UFOs in Washtenaw County. The talk of Washtenaw County this noon is, are there really unidentified flying objects? Or are people just seeing things? If they are just seeing things, then a lot of people are seeing those things. At least 40 persons have reported seeing an unidentified flying object last night. Not only seeing it, but seeing it land in a field on the farm of Frank Manor. 12 of the witnesses were police officers. All of the witnesses, when interviewed by law officials, corroborated the stories of the other witnesses. WJR News contacted Washtenaw County Sheriff Douglas Harvey, who had this to say about the UFOs.
I have not myself seen it, but the fact remains now we've got too many people, too many trained people that have spotted this thing and give us the same identical description. We had a fellow in here who was from England. He spotted it, him and his wife, up near the Pinckney area, and along with him was an engineer from the University of Michigan. They both spotted it. Last night, about 10 officers spotted the same identical thing. Various farmers and a professor from the University of Michigan spotted it. Everybody gave us the same identical description when interviewed separately. And I see, I'm getting to the point now, how can you tell all these people? They've seen something. We've got no answers yet, Lowell.
Washtenaw County Sheriff Douglas Harvey. Harvey said men will be at the Manor Farm today with Geiger counters. Manor and his son said they went to within 500 yards of the object that they described as being in the shape of a football. Two other Washtenaw deputies saw UFOs last Monday night and said they took pictures, but that the film was sent to New York to be developed and that it would take 2 weeks. Meanwhile, there's a report that the government has confiscated that film. There is no confirmation of that report.
Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department deputies reported that they saw unidentified flying objects last night between 9 and 11 o'clock. These objects were flying in a swampy area and would land and take off again, going up to a height of 200 feet. Persons in the Rush Lake area also reported seeing 3 of these unidentified objects. They were hovering around the lake and appeared to be doing some kind of maneuvering.
Used to check the area where 40 persons say a flying saucer landed last night some 15 miles northwest of Ann Arbor. A dozen of the witnesses were policemen who said a mysterious craft about the size of a large automobile joined 4 others before streaking away at high speed.
A statement today from the Commissioner of State Police, Frederick Davis, who said he was taking a new interest in UFO reports. Davids, by the way, holds also the post of Civil Defense Director, was reacting to reports from about 60 persons who claimed to have seen an unidentified flying object near Ann Arbor last night. At least 40 people claimed to have seen one of the objects land. Among the witnesses were several police officers, and WJR newsman William Harris on the scene today heard police officer Robert Honeywell of Dexter say he was one of the residents of that area who saw similar objects zipping through the skies early last Monday and Wednesday. As for State Police Commissioner Davis today, he was contacted by newsman Dave White and said during conversation,
We certainly are interested in these reports that are coming in, and we intend to look further into it. We have men assigned now that are inquiring into it, and expect they will talk with Washtenaw County authorities and with some of the people that are supposed to have seen certain objects.
What is your personal attitude toward these objects?
Well, actually, I know nothing more about them than what I read or hear in the reports. But when you get as many people citing something as cited things last night in the Dexter area and over the weekend, why, I think it's time to take another long, hard look at it anyway. I think many of these people certainly aren't the type that make a report just for the sake of the publicity, and probably truly did see something.
State Police Commissioner Frederick Davis.
Dozens of people in Washtenaw County and surrounding areas have become firm believers in flying saucers in the past few weeks. Over the weekend, more reports. 40 persons, 12 of them law officers, reported seeing an unidentified flying object land in a swamp near Ann Arbor. Officers said 4 sister ships hovered in a quarter circle above the other object which landed. They said it then took off with a warbling sound like the echo of a ricocheting bullet. Dexter policeman Robert Honeywell said he and other residents saw similar objects zipping through the skies early last Monday and again on Wednesday. He explained to WJR's William Harris.
Moreover, in the area where the one was down, it just disappeared completely. In fact, I didn't even see they went. Well, they just cut their lights and left, that they disappeared completely. And the one that went over my car and the other patrol cars, I watched it got a little bit beyond Territorial Road, and then I went back to see if I could, see the other ones, and they were gone, and I would turn back and look and see the other one. That one was still there, and it was gone too. Is this the one that was on the ground? Possibly. I wouldn't say that it was.
47-year-old Frank Manor, a farmer, and his 19-year-old son Ronald said they approached within 100 yards of the strange object sighted last night. They said it lay in a swamp and had pulsating lights on each end. Manor said it was pitted like coral rock and about the length of a car. He said its shape was like that of a football. Manor said his son then said, "Look at that horrible thing," and the craft vanished. 6 police cars chased the formation of strange objects, but the objects vanished in the darkness. In Washington, the Air Force said it had no report as yet on the latest sighting of the UFOs, but that its investigative office at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton is checking the incident. Well, the Air Force is characteristically silent on UFO reports. State Police Colonel Frederick Davids says he plans to look into the matter.
We certainly are interested in these reports that are coming in, and we intend to look further into it. We have men assigned now that are inquiring into it, and expect we will talk with Washtenaw County authorities and with some of the people that are supposed to have seen certain objects.
What is your personal attitude toward these objects?
Well, actually, I know nothing more about them than what I read or hear in the reports, but when you get as many people citing something, as cited things last night in the Dexter area and over the weekend, why, I think it's time to take another long, hard look at it anyway. I think many of these people certainly aren't the type that make a report just for the sake of the publicity. Probably truly did see something.
State Police Colonel Frederick Davids, questioned by WJR newsman Dave White. This has just come in from Ann Arbor. WJR's William Harris, reporting from there, has just interviewed the Washtenaw County Sheriff, Douglas Harvey.
Sheriff, as I understand it, you just completed an investigation on the scene of the sighting last night. What did you discover?
We found nothing out there. There's no indication, no evidence of where it's come down, where the Mr. Manor said it had come down, where my officer stated that the area where it had come down. Also, the Geiger counter picked up nothing.
There was no flat grass, flat brush, or anything that would indicate something had landed there?
None whatsoever.
Do you have any theories as to what this might be?
I wish I did. I wish I had some answers. I don't. I was a little doubtful at first when the first sighting. This was on the 17th. We sighted the first one, my men did. Then again on the 18th, and then last night. But now we've got too many people, too many trained officers have also seen this. So my doubt is gone. I know they've seen something. What it is, I don't know.
Do you intend to continue your investigation?
Very definitely, till we find out exactly what it is.
Hillsdale County Civil Defense Director William Van Horn says he watched an unidentified flying object hover over a marshy section near that city for more than 3 hours last night. He was called to the scene by 87 Hillsdale College co-eds who also watched from the dormitory. There were no sightings last night in Washtenaw County, where a vehicle of some sort apparently landed Sunday night.
Dormitory full of co-eds at Hillsdale College, along with that county's civil defense director, saw what they described as an eerie object settle in a swamp last night. Hillsdale is some 50 miles southwest of Dexter, where half 100 persons, including police officers, reported seeing flying saucers Sunday night. The Hillsdale Civil Defense Director, William Van Horn, gave WJR News this description of what he saw near Hillsdale College for several hours last night.
Appeared to be on the surface of the earth, on the ground. However, I don't feel that it was, because it moved very freely from left to right and right to left at various times, which it would be impossible for any type of vehicle on wheels or on the ground to move that smoothly because of the bogginess and the marshy portion there. But at the time that I first observed it, we'll say that on the right was a quite a dim orange-colored light, and to the left was quite a kind of a dim white light, and it was approximately 25 feet in between the two lights.
Hillsdale County Civil Defense Director William Van Horn. The Air Force says it is putting its flying saucer detective, Dr. Alan Hynek of Northwestern University, on the Hillsdale and the Dexter sightings.
The usually skeptical U.S. Air Force has dispatched a top scientist from Northwestern University to look into the rash of UFO sightings in Washtenaw County. Dr. H. Alan Hynek, chairman of the Dearborn Observatory at Northwestern. He's the Air Force's scientific consultant to the UFO study program. He's reportedly arrived and will be operating out of Selfridge Air Force Base near Mount Clemens. His arrival comes in the wake of still another sighting of an unidentified flying object last night. More than 80 co-eds, an assistant dean, and the county civil defense director watched a UFO hover and glow in a swampy area near Hillsdale College.
Civil Defense Director William Van Horn was alerted by the house mother of the dormitory after the girls there first spotted the object. He came and saw and told WJR's Dave White about it.
To be on the surface of the earth, on the ground. However, I don't feel that it was, because it moved very freely from left to right and right to left at various times, which it would be impossible for any type of vehicle on wheels or on the ground to move that smoothly because of the bogginess and the marshy portion there. But at the time that I first observed it, we'll say that on the right was a quite a dim orange-colored light, and to the left was quite a kind of a dim white light, and it was approximately 25 feet in between the two lights. Now, I was observing this with binoculars, and at this distance after dark, it's pretty hard to estimate the distance there. It would at times rise from its position just over the surface, and upon rising, the lights would become more brilliant. And at the time, from our municipal airport here, we had a beacon which was throwing a beam of light, as a beacon does around the area. And this vehicle seemed to go up, and as it would get up to a height of approximately 150 feet, near the bottom portion of the beam of light, it became stationary, and then would descend back down. In other words, it was appeared to me as if it was attempting to stay out of this beam of light that was coming around.
The description of the object generally coincides with that seen by more than 50 persons near Ann Arbor Sunday night. One of the first girls to spot the UFO last night was Miss Josephine Wilson, an 18-year-old freshman from Cleveland. She said it gave off a yellow glow and seemed to quiver. She said she and the others watched it for several hours before it went away. As for her feelings about UFOs now, she said,
"Well, I never believed it totally at all. But when I saw it, and I saw the strange things it did, it wasn't anything horrendous. I mean, nothing that, like a big ball of fire in front of your eyes. But it was very strange. And after watching it for 2 hours, and seeing it hover around, and change lights, etc., and seeing it glow, I don't think I'm going to laugh so much from now on and say that there definitely is no such thing as UFOs."
On the local news front, an Air Force investigating team is looking into the rash of UFO reports that have taken place in southeastern Michigan. The team is headed by Dr. H. Allen Hynek of Northwestern University, who is the Air Force scientific advisor on Project Blue Book. That's the Air Force project to investigate UFO reports. WJR's Phil Jones contacted the military chief of that project at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base near Dayton, Major Hector Quintanilla, and had some questions for the Major about the investigation.
Well, no, one of the things that prompted the investigation is the general interest by the public and the press. And the other one is that we'd like to find what they were. I mean, so many people saw them.
You received word of any other organization, perhaps a radar unit with one of the Air Force bases or something, is also spotting these?
Negative. We have contacted the Detroit Air Defense Secretary. They spotted nothing unusually unique.
What will this investigation entail?
Well, talking to the people, collecting their impressions of what they observed, and trying to determine what the stimulus was that caused them to see this thing in that fashion.
If the Air Force gets the same answers the Washtenaw and Hillsdale County Sheriff's officers got, there are probably going to be a lot of people wondering if they're going to say the same thing the sheriff's officers said, that the stories jibed so much, somebody must have seen something.
Flying saucers apparently took the night off. Authorities say less than a handful of telephone reports of unidentified flying objects in the Hillsdale area, but knots of hardy sky watchers who surrounded reported landing sites near Dexter and Hillsdale spent a damp and fruitless several hours. Today, an Air Force investigating team will slog through the marshes and talk to some of the persons who claim to have seen UFOs in recent days. Northwestern University astrophysicist Dr. H. Allen Hynek, the top Air Force advisor on UFOs, is heading the team. A Selfridge Air Force Base spokesman will say only that the group will continue its search for more information today. Sunday night, a dozen police officers and upwards of 40 civilians witnessed the apparent landing of a saucer-like object in a field near Dexter, some 16 miles northwest of Ann Arbor. Monday night, Hillsdale County's Civil Defense Director William Van Horn and 87 college co-eds watched one hover over a marshy area for at least 3 hours. An assistant dean of Hillsdale College also claims to have seen the object.
UFOs, Dr. H. Allen Hynek. Mike Pappas spoke with him.
The fact so far is that the people, the relatively few that I've talked to so far, have seen light. Basically, it's large, bright light hovering for sometimes as much as 2 hours. Growing brighter, getting dimmer, brighter, moving, rising a little bit, and settling down again. But very little as to any shape of a tangible object. The concentration has been on light.
What can you tell me about what you have found out thus far?
The people seem to be sincere, and certainly the Air Force and Project Blue Book regards all witnesses who report these things as sincere and honest, and in general we find that they are. And I find here no indication of a hoax, but I have no notion as yet as to what this is, because in these situations it's like putting parts of a jigsaw together. You have a little piece here and a piece there, you've got to bring them together. And of course the whole idea is to separate facts from interpretation of facts.
Latham, Genesee County reports by people stating that they have seen unidentified flying objects has now cropped up in Clinton, Genesee County. Early this morning, around 2:30, an unidentified person reported strange lights hovering in a wooded area in the vicinity of Lapeer and Dulce Roads in Burton Township. Genesee County Sheriff's deputies and state police went to the scene. 2 of the deputies said that after an initial investigation which revealed nothing, they sat in their cruiser for about 35 minutes. At the end of that time, they said they saw a glow of light which lit up the wooded area for around 30 seconds or so and then disappeared. They then went into the woods where they had observed the light, but could find nothing there in the dense brush. The Air Force says it hopes to come up with an explanation within 24 hours for those unidentified objects. The investigation headquarters is at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at Dayton, Ohio. Project Officer Major Hector Quintanilla says the investigation of the Michigan sightings, in his words, is beginning to shape up. We hope to have a reasonable explanation sometime on Friday. Lansing, Governor George Romney says he's as much in the dark about the objects as the average American resident. Romney says that the government has never filled him in on any possible research that might account for the reported sightings.
CBS News has obtained what are described as photographs of an unidentified flying object taken near Ann Arbor, Michigan, where there has been a rash of sightings of UFOs. Bill Plant has the pictures, time exposures, and the story at Ann Arbor.
Sergeant Newell K. Schneider was out on patrol in the early morning hours of March 17th. He was riding with Deputy David Fitzpatrick. They were among the first to observe the phenomena which has been seen in the Ann Arbor area around this county several times. Sergeant Schneider, can you tell us what you saw and how you happened to see it?
Well, it was somewhat of an oval shape, looked like a toy top, somewhat upside down. It was a bluish yellow or a bluish green color on top. The bottom was a bright red. As far as glowing or blinking lights, there was no blinking lights on this object at all. It was one solid light at all times between the 2 or 3 different colors. There's no flashing whatsoever of it.
When Deputy Fitzpatrick and Sergeant Schneider saw this phenomenon, they made about 4 pictures with a Minox camera. These 2 pictures came out. They were enlarged by Detective Harold Kerr of the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department. These 2 pictures are from separate negatives. They both show 2 light streaks, one here and one here, one here and one here, in the same relative position from which the picture was taken. These were printed from separate negatives. The resolution on this picture is a little bit better. Is that what you saw, Sergeant?
Yes, it is.
Are you relieved that there's something in the picture?
Certainly am. Taking a lot of harassment for this.
Could you tell us what we see? This dark part down here is what, a field?
Yes. Cornfield right in front of the patrol car.
And then these lights along here.
This was the housing section of Milan Village. Street lights in the background and red lights.
And then you can vaguely see the outline of clumps of trees all the way across the picture. And a house at the far left side in both pictures. These pictures were both taken from the same angle?
Yes.
Detective Kerr, the photo expert who made these enlargements from the Minox negatives, tells us that these two markings cannot be flaws in the negative. He says there were no scratches on the emulsion side of the film. In addition to that, these prints were made from separate negatives, and they show these light streaks in the same place in each picture. Sheriff, what do you think about this now that you've seen these pictures?
Well, I don't know what to think about it. I was quite skeptical on this until I seen these pictures, and there definitely is something there, some type of an object.
And what was it they really saw? The great flying saucer mystery of 1966 began here, near Dexter, Michigan, late in March. And before the month was out, flying saucers were being reported from New Jersey to California, from Colorado to Long Island, from Ohio to Georgia. Invariably, the first reports were brought in by quiet and sober citizens like Frank Manor, father of 10 children, a countryman, a hunting man, a man used to wooded swamplands by night.
Well, first beginning, we were watching television, and we have 6 dogs here, and they started raising a fuss, in which they never do much, so I went outside and gave a yell at them, and as I turned around to come back on the porch, I looked to the north of me, and looked like a fallen star. It was red and kind of coming down, and on about a 45, and so then I watched it, and I was going to see if it landed, and then maybe go down and see what it was. And when it got to the top of the trees, it stopped, and a blue and a white light come on it. And I looked at it, and I thought I was seeing things.
Frank Manor's UFO remained over his swamp more than 4 hours. His children saw it, his in-laws saw it, residents of the area saw it, the police saw it. No one photographed it, but Sergeant Newell Schneider of the Sheriff's Office remembered it well enough to draw it.
No, it moved very rapidly at any speed, or rather any direction it wanted to go, while it could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
40 miles away, another swampland and another UFO sighting. This is Hillsdale, and the girls at Hillsdale College had a night to remember.
Well, when I was looking out the window with binoculars, I guess it was about 12, I saw it, and I saw 2 red lights, and I saw it look to be shaped like a pie. I could just see the front of it. I just saw the round front, and I could see the lights on either side. And then the red light was sort of casting a glow over the whole thing, so it looked like a round disc.
At first, when I'd heard the other girls talk about it, I believed them, yet I couldn't really make myself comprehend it because I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. But then when I saw it, I just was fascinated. I wasn't afraid. I just wanted to stay there and keep my eyes glued to it. I couldn't leave.
I know I saw it, and I know myself I saw it, but I believe I saw it, but I can't fathom it because it seems so unreal.
William Van Horn, Hillsdale's undertaker and civil defense director, also spotted the UFO and was out with his Geiger counter next day, checking a mysterious perfect circle where the UFO had been seen. Van Horn did not find any radioactivity here, but this did not shake his certainty that he had seen a hovering vehicle with 2 lights. Many people asked him why he did not go right up to the UFO in the dark.
I'd much rather be a live caller than a dead hero. And with the area of uncertainty that we have here, how do I know but what maybe there's a current, a little electrical charge which is being radiated by one of these vehicles, which would electrocute you if you got within a certain area of it. There was no sound whatsoever. I could not hear a bit of sound.
The Air Force sent its chief scientific consultant on UFOs, Professor J. Allen Hynek, to check the Michigan sightings. Dr. Hynek agreed that the good citizens of Michigan had seen something in the marshlands. He thought they had seen marsh gas.
I've had many letters pointing out that they, as children on the farm, had many experiences with swamp lights, and that this was obviously the thing that it was, and they couldn't understand why the people in Michigan got so excited over swamp lights. And the illusion of motion frequently is given by the fact that a little bit of swamp light appears here, it goes out, another one appears over here, that goes out, but the illusion as viewed from a distance is that the objects have moved back and forth. And sometimes this gas will gather into a ball and actually float away.
In Washington, a private unofficial group known as NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, called a news conference, dismissed the swamp gas theory, and reopened an old argument with the Air Force. NICAP's director, Major Donald E. Kehoe, a retired Marine Corps officer, insisted that the Air Force knew more than it was telling.
We are being observed by some type of device which is ahead of us, far ahead of us, and is probably controlled by a highly advanced superior civilization. Now, this is a conclusion which I personally have stated and is shared by some members of our Board of Governors and advisors, not all of them. But it has reached to the point where many people in the Air Force have the same conclusion. In fact, the Air Force at one time had a top secret estimate that these things were interplanetary spaceships. So you will see that this, instead of being a subject for ridicule and a big joke, actually is a serious matter which could affect the lives of all of us.
And for the umpteenth time in as many years, the Air Force, called before a congressional committee, said it was hiding nothing. Air Force Secretary Harold Brown.
We have not been hiding anything. The investigations have been made public. The explanations of those where there is a clear explanation have been made public. The hearing this morning was public for just that reason. In those cases where for lack of data, or lack of a convincing hypothesis, the sighting has been kept in the unidentified category, we've been perfectly willing to say that too.
But if the Air Force had nothing to hide, Frank Manor, the Michigan farmer who had brought in the first report, was caught in the middle. He was mad.
Well, you can look at here, look, beer bottles thrown. Look at my windshield. What would you think if somebody was throwing beer bottles at your house, stand out in the middle of the road screaming, you nut, you're fanatic and all that? What would you think?
Are you sorry now that you did tell people what you saw?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry because not that it's not the truth, but it's just the idea, the reaction of the people. They think you're a nut. Tell you the truth, that's just what they figure you are. And I'm not going to take it no more. I don't want nobody down in here. I just leave me alone. And if the thing lands right there by that pump, I'd never say a word. And he got out and talked to me. I wouldn't tell nobody. That's just the way I feel. I'm bitter and disgusted in the whole matter. And if people's going to act like that, I hope one lands right in Ann Arbor, right in the middle of Detroit.
Here's a subject and a man to intrigue you. The country's going wild now with reports of UFO, unidentified flying objects. They're going all over the place. Recently we had a guest on the show, Frank Edwards, who is convinced UFOs are from another planet. He's written a book about it and has some pretty good arguments. Today, a UFO expert, Dr. Allen Hynek, he is director of Lindheimer Astronomical Research Center, that's at Northwestern University, and he's consultant to the Air Force on UFOs, is here to tell us what he thinks of this phenomena. So here is Dr. Allen Hynek. We're all going to hang on every word, Doctor. I tell you that. Everywhere the paper you pick up, magazine, it's getting hotter, the whole issue.
It is really.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think that
I started this, way back in 1948. And in...
You started it?
I started investigating things in 1948. And then I think I would have taken just about any bet that by 1950 or 51 we would have forgotten the whole thing. That it would have been something like, do you remember I'm sure you do, goldfish eating craze and so forth?
Sure, colleges and
it didn't. The reports have persisted. And not only have they persisted, but they're getting more and more.
Are you not the one, Doctor, recently in the reports at the girls' school up in the Northwest that went up and said it was gas or something? Or it was a gas.
He was gas.
They all were gas. No, something you...
That was me, but this is a very special case. Now, do you have about half an hour to go into the chemistry of the situation?
We don't. Go anyway.
Well, I think we'll postpone that unless you want to. All right.
But no. But all I want from you was definitely, according to your investigation, a gas rising from a pond, right?
This was a very likely explanation since the sightings occurred, both of them in Dexter and in Hillsdale. They both occurred in swamps.
And a few of them have been near electrical plants.
Yes.
And you get sort of a great big electrolysis where the offshoots of atoms of electricity might split the moisture into hydrogen and oxygen, and the two gases have separate colors.
There's our chemist.
Yeah, but did you notice what the doctor said? Very good. Very good. Just as the doctor said, and this often happens on this show, we have Walter Sullivan on occasionally, the society editor, the science editor, we love that, of the New York Times, and he always says, yes, that's a likely explanation.
Yeah. It's a very unusual explanation, I should say, Merv, because I think if the papers jumped on that and said because this was a likely explanation in that case, it explained all UFOs. Well, it certainly doesn't. In fact, I think that was the only case we've had out of 10,000 cases.
Why can I not get a scientist, though, to say that is definitely the explanation?
Well, because he's a scientist. He's bound to be cautious. He's supposed to weigh and consider. He doesn't jump in and jump to conclusions unless he has some evidence.
What do you think, Doctor, UFOs are?
Well, first of all, they're reports. Yeah, I've got a little thing here, it just so happens. This sheet from the Dear George, or by George column. Student wrote in, to Dear George, I am looking for proof that unidentified flying objects exist. Somebody said you had information on this matter. Do unidentified flying objects exist, and what exactly are they? Signed, Student. George writes back, Dear Student, unidentified flying objects do exist. Obviously, if we knew what they were, they would no longer be unidentified flying objects. They would be identified flying objects. Think, man, think. And that's exactly what the whole point is. UFOs are reports. And the great majority of them turn from UFOs into IFOs, identified flying objects. The great majority.
But for the unidentified ones...
Yeah, let's talk about the unidentified.
What are the possibilities? What might they be?
Well, there's a great school that says they're all nonsense. Then there are some people who will say they're secret devices. The government is testing something and we really, they say, come off it, can't you really tell me now? I won't tell anybody, but aren't they really secret devices? And there's a third hypothesis, of course, as Frank Edwards seems to believe, that they are from other solar systems, or other planets at any rate.
And there are little people are operating them? Or some intelligent life?
I've never seen any little people operating them, no. But this is the reports. And in these things one must always remember that they are reports. We have no hardware, no pictures that show real detail. Nobody would be happier than me as an astronomer to have visits from other solar systems. It would make astronomy even more exciting than it is.
Do you believe there's some other planets?
I think we must keep that possibility open, yeah.
The reason I ask, in all of the artist concepts that I've seen of little men from outer space, they've been sort of round or egg-shaped with several arms.
And I was looking at
people or the object.
Whatever we saw, whatever entity seemed to have that look. And just notice how similar that would look to a surveyor if some moon people should see this object land on the moon with all of these tentacles and all of these things. It would seem to them as though a strange thing should happen. Let's suppose at that same minute, one of our people from the space agency should press the button and it should leave the moon's surface by its own power. They would say, gee, we saw it land and turn around and take pictures and shoot off. And then somebody on the moon tries to explain that to them. Is it possible that just such technology could be taking place from other planets?
It's certainly possible. But I think here we have to distinguish between the words possible and probable. A thing can be possible, scientifically possible, and yet not very probable. For instance, I want to know, where are these things at 12 o'clock noon? So many of them are reported at night. Where are they hiding at high noon?
Well, wouldn't you come in at night if you were on another planet?
Hide, wouldn't I?
No, where are the stars at 12 o'clock noon?
We know we're there. We can see them through telescopes.
What you are consultant to the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any official word from the Air Force or official curiosity from the Air Force? Do they put any emphasis?
Well, I have very recently, and so has the Scientific Advisory Board, advised the Air Force really that we should take the whole problem considerably more seriously than we have.
What do they think?
I think they're going to go along with me.
Let me talk to you about the caliber of people who are reporting these things, Doctor. Airline pilots have been reporting them.
Yes.
What do you think of the caliber? If they're not nuts?
Well, that's the point. You know, it wasn't Lincoln who said, I'm sure, that you can't call all of the people liars all of the time, but if you didn't, you should have said it. And that's the condition I sort of find myself in. On one hand, we have no hardware. We have no real photographs. All the things seem to be against it. On the other hand, I cannot continue to call everybody a liar. We have not only pilots, but we have directors of scientific laboratories that have reported these to me. We have, well, and take the great number of policemen. We have, I think, in general, policemen are to be respected. It's certainly, in certain cases, the testimony of those very men would be sufficient to send the person to the chair or the gas chamber. And yet, why then should we not at least seriously take a look and listen to their testimony when they say they were followed by a very brilliant bright light? I think we should.
They took pictures of that, excuse me. They took pictures of that particular one where the two highly respected policemen who were together in the Midwest, remember? And it was red with the flashing lights, and it followed the... I saw the picture.
You saw the picture?
Yeah. It was in the Saturday Evening Post.
Oh.
And they had taken pictures. That's a reliable source, but they won't send it to the chair, but they're all fun. But they had taken pictures of it looked like the usual, saucer, like two saucers together, but it seemed to have a series of lights. And of all the people who saw this thing, the majority of them were all highly respected people. And in one case, the policeman saw it and he thought he was cracking up, and he went and got his superior officer, who came back, and they did take pictures of it. It was red, and it was in some funny place, like I hate to say funny place. Did they see your show in Iowa?
Yeah.
Well, it was some darling place like Iowa. And I kept thinking, well, how come they're looking in Iowa, and they were in New Hampshire and stuff too, in little towns in New Hampshire. And I thought, gee, you'd think they'd come. I know it's that big city snobbery, but you'd think they'd come to New York or go to Washington or Fort Knox, or they don't know where they're going.
Have you heard anything, Doctor? Aside from the sightings, have you had any audible contact through electronic devices that would indicate there's something out there that we don't know about?
Well, that's another thing that bothers me. We do have radar surveillance. The radars today are sufficiently good to pick up an explosion bolt in orbit. When a bolt suddenly falls off a Gemini or something, radars can pick this up. Therefore, if this is the dilemma, this is the real problem that puzzles me, and I think why we should look at it more carefully. Admitting that I've been very much a skeptic all along, and I've generally considered a debunker, but all along, these objects or these reports, a report, for instance, the problem is essentially this, that you have a dilemma between the lack of tangible evidence, and you have the reports of reputable, good people.
Nothing has ever been recorded on radar?
There are reports, many reports of sightings on radar, but there are also many denials. It's very difficult to trace back and find out whether it actually was seen or not.
Is it possible that if they have this equipment and this, ability, assuming, I would like to think personally that they really were, from other planets. I really would. That if they had this, knowledge and put it to this kind of use, would they not then conceivably have something that could wipe out, would something to deter their signals off of radio? Yeah.
Very difficult if they have any metal. But
maybe they don't have metal.
Maybe it's all plastic.
They come from a planet where metal is not part of matter.
Well, it's becoming very archaic now, metal. Everything's in plastic. I'm sorry to say.
No, that's all right. You can say it.
Well, it's okay with
What are these bags you brought on? Those are simply to show that the part of the static or part of the noise, you see, part of the IFOs, the UFOs that very quickly become IFOs, identified flying objects. We have some hoaxes, not many, but here was one in Glassboro, New Jersey, which we spent a lot of time on, and finally, after all this gunk in the middle of it, we found this. It says Black Cat with a firecracker. I don't think they're making Black Cat firecrackers on Mars. But it was picked up. And this one, two grade school students, 11-year-old students, reported this to their science teacher and said they had found this, this has fallen from the air. Turns out to be an extrusion from a nylon machine. The reject from
a bunch of old socks.
Sure.
Those, what you're wearing out there, ladies?
You see, I must say, there are not many of these. You would think there'd be many more hoaxes, but there aren't.
Do we ever hear reports from other nations? Why is everything coming from America?
It isn't at all.
Other countries are reporting?
It's a global phenomenon, completely global. They started, as a matter of fact, in Sweden, not in here, in 1946 in Sweden. And let's go over the countries. Well, England has more UFOs per square mile than we do. Of course, we have more square miles. But France had a tremendous wave in 1954. Brazil, Argentina, Australia, Japan, Spain. I'm not sure about Russia. They wouldn't tell us anyway.
What you say, 1946 was the first?
Mm-hmm. But I first of the modern wave.
Yes, because aren't these listed in history?
Yes, there always have been sightings, unexplained sightings in the sky, clear back, except that the reporting was not very good in those days. And
you saw the wheel.
Yeah, it may have been a flying saucer.
Yeah. What do you think's eventually going to happen? Are you...
Well, I'm seriously proposing, after all these years of thinking about it, I'm perhaps have been rather cautious, but I think now it's high time that civilian scientists took a solid look at this, that we have... I'd like to actually propose a civilian scientist research center for the study of the UFO phenomenon. And by the UFO phenomenon, I mean not only the reports, but the kinds of people who make the reports and the general study of the public interest. And I would not have just physical scientists, astronomers and so forth on it, but I think we should also have psychologists and people who are well versed in investigative techniques. In other words, I think the time has come when we should give a good, solid scientific look at this thing.
Interesting. Good for you, Doctor. We'll be right back.